So next up, that brings us to our next speaker, which is our special guest speaker. This gentleman, as a leader and as an individual, has received more awards for excellence in community involvement. His company that he leads, as CEO and founder, has received more awards for excellence and for community involvement than any other company I know. I'm very excited to welcome my good friend, Brad Mitchell from Mojo Hosts. Welcome, Brad. Thanks for joining us. Big round of applause for Brad. Let's bring it in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today. It's awesome to see so many friends in the audience, and I see a lot of customers, and I also see some new faces. So that for me is really exciting. It's a very kind introduction. I did start about 25 years ago, and I think one of the things that maybe I would like to think has made me a better web host and better at what I do is that I have some relatable experiences with all of you. I've owned pay sites, I've owned free sites, I ran an affiliate program. I didn't throw it in there for a minute or 5 years. I might have had an alternative billing company in the early 2000s also. So my experience is real varied. Obviously, what we're known best for today is Mojo Host. I feel very blessed. We host thousands of adult companies and representing tens of thousands of adult sites on the internet. I believe I'm a pretty committed member of the industry, and I like to encourage everybody to give back to the charities that support our industries. So, at Mojo Host, we do that with ASACP, Free Speech Coalition, and also Pineapple Support. I'm really proud to be on the board of two of those, of the ASACP and also Pineapple Support. And if anyone would like more information about any of these charities, please feel free to follow up afterwards. I'd be happy to make introductions. So I have prepared a lot of information to share today. Some of it I'm sure is going to bore the shit out of a few of you, but really, I think it's good stuff. Some of it's highly technical. I have a bunch of topics and a lot of content. Start my clock here. So I'm going to try to race through that reasonably so that I can get all of the information out there and still leave us plenty of time to answer your questions on any of these topics. On each of the topics, I am touching on some cloud things, and then at the end, I tie that all together when we specifically talk about that. And it looks like we've got a share here on my slide deck. Not a ton of slides, but something prettier than me that can be on your full screen instead of my face. So we're gonna share that. All right, there we go. All right, so there's the about me. We're going to talk about some web hosting and technology topics. You can go to the next slide even. All right, so I'm going to touch on something. I end up being in the middle of a lot of conversations because at Mojo Host, we're working with all of the software companies and all of our customers. So it very much makes us the monkey in the middle. So I thought it would really be worth mentioning that there are new features of the most commonly used content management softwares that most of the companies present in the room are using that you can leverage for your business. So new storage technology is available to all of the popular industry software packages. After starting the conversation many years ago with each vendor, scalable cloud storage is now available for use with the industry's most commonly used CMS platforms, including ElevatedX, MacBunny, KBS. Now also, and very soon, the most popular affiliate tracking software, NAS, is releasing a fully functional content management system for licensed users, and doing this at no additional charge for people that are already using the NAS affiliate tracking system. And if anybody wants to discuss that, I'm happy to make introductions or talk about it later in Q&A. But otherwise, I would say watch that vendor for their product updates or contact them to schedule a demonstration if you're interested in changing your CMS. So what does this mean, this new technology that's available to all these software packages? Well, so you can stop building very large and inefficient dedicated servers and pivot into scalable cloud storage. Is it cheaper? Well, the honest answer is sometimes it's cheaper and sometimes it's not. Larger, more mature pay sites often have a setup that looks something like this. They have 2 servers in a load balance pair serving all their members area content, and then they do backups to a third location, something stored somewhere else. And this would allow for a mature company to fail either one of those single servers and still be online and still serve their members well. So cloud storage is faster, it's more reliable, and it grows and shrinks on demand, and it doesn't have the same risks and problems one would encounter using individual servers. Cloud storage uses as many as 3 copies of your data instead of 1, spread across hundreds of storage devices instead of what most of you might have in your very large dedicated servers, which could be somewhere between 2 and 36 drives, for example. So why change to object storage now? Well, I think there's no time like the present. Many site owners who have been in business for a long time are probably already due to update their operating system because things like CentOS and their older versions are now actually end of life. So doing this requires effort and a fresh installation on a new server anyways. So doing everything at once could allow a site owner to leap into more current server technology with faster CPUs and NVMe storage while simultaneously moving what they were spending for a large rate of storage disks straight into a cloud storage pivot. The result, a whole stack refresh to improve performance and security while lowering latencies on everything you do. Lastly, on this topic of cloud storage, it is most efficiently paired with the use of a content delivery network, CDN. Why? Because content delivery scales beautifully globally using CDN, lowering the request volumes and burden on your servers. Also, because you will pay for data transfer leaving cloud storage, you might as well use CDN to buffer and cache your data for free. This means you minimize access to your data storage, leveraging the cache of a content delivery network, and pay for CDN delivery as 90% of your outbound data transfer costs, with about 10% of your data costs coming from your cloud storage data transfer. If you pick the right combination of providers, you can really win at scale and on costs. It's no longer the case that you can game the system and build your own CDNs or storage cheaper or smarter than you can leverage from service providers. Recently, I played this scenario out with a very savvy client of mine who, while having their primary servers on MojoHost, had leveraged more than 20 like sub $100 servers at OVH, who's a notorious discounter because they just have like unbelievably low prices, right? So they built all of this themselves and managed it as a distributed storage and CDN cluster. We were able to remove a ton of business complexity for them, a bunch of management overhead, and add scalability back to their business by deploying a simple combination of CDN and object storage. Now they can expand sensibly beyond their 50 terabytes of storage and also not max out their servers' 5 petabytes of monthly data transfer, which is around the equivalent of 20 gigabits. So, all right, that was my first topic there. All right, so the next one, now we're going to start getting a little bit more technical. The next topic that I've got here is what I think is the most interesting change to happen in storage and server storage in the last 15 years. It really just happened since COVID. I think first generations of the hardware started to appear, in the year before COVID, but some of these were commercially available before, but most were not commonly offered by hosting and cloud service providers until recently. And as I was saying, further, the next generation of these technologies just leapfrogged itself, again, making performance differences even more dramatic. In other words, the chances are very, very high that the technology you have in use for all of your online platforms does not leverage what I am considering a paradigm shift in new storage technology. Solid state drives are now functionally obsolete, replaced by what we call NVMe technology. This change to storage technology is, I think, the most interesting thing to happen lately. It is as big of a change as when the switch started from hard disks with spinning platters to solid state drives made of memory. Back then, it was way more than a 10x, and today it's more than a 10x over SSD speed on speed, throughput, and most importantly, what we call operations per second. Think of operations per second as transactions per second. In the context of rendering a single page with dynamic content with its many database queries, sometimes dozens each, times tens or hundreds or thousands of simultaneous users on your website, that's what we're talking about here. Your ability to do this at very, very low latency, and storage is a big part of that, as well as all of the other components, how they fit together in your server. So changing storage from solid state drives to NVMe captures this incredible performance increase, instantly multiplying the capability of your storage while lowering the associated latency or time to deliver such results. This is really a wonderful thing for everyone. It's especially impactful for small and medium site operators who are otherwise doing more things on each server, or perhaps even with their whole business on a single server. It really is a lot of bang for the buck on performance capability. At the heart of the storage change is connectivity and throughput changes. Old solid state drives, hard drives, and even the first generation of NVMe storage is connected to your server by what is called a SATA connection, which can function at a maximum but theoretical throughput speed of 600 megabytes per second, assuming your devices have the most recent generation of SATA technology. SATA is also a communications protocol. So this means data is actually being translated when it's being read, wrote, and changed. This is different than NVMe, which connects to your system at the speed of its bus. Think of a system bus like your server's nervous system. And the newest generation is moving data on and off drives to and from your CPU and to and from your memory at speeds as high as 7,500 megabytes per second. That is more than a 10x of what's available if you're just using SSDs and hard drives. What can you do? Well, my advice, always talk to your hosts or talk to your employees, talk to your technical experts, see what storage technology they are offering or suggesting, and understand what the cost difference would be to your business. I would say the devil is in the details about the use of this new technology. Many hosts advertise NVMe storage, but do not communicate in their marketing or educational materials as many as 3 important facts. This is Brad's buyer beware disclaimer here. First, there are many hosts using non-enterprise storage parts. What does this mean? This means they are using consumer parts which lack quality, durability, power loss protection, and error correction that you would otherwise expect in server-grade parts. Cheap parts like that can result in data loss, unexplainable server errors, heat problems, and the performance literally falls over when you stack up a request queue that is relevant for a server and its demands versus what you would expect on your own desktop computer that serves a single user. In other words, you never really realize the advertised performance values because the drive performance is exponentially worse when serving hundreds of simultaneous users instead of just a few, when the equipment that's in use on a server or a computer is not what we would call like enterprise grade. Second, many hosts are using first generation NVMe parts, which are connected behind SATA interfaces. This means that while you may benefit from increased transactions per second, but that your storage connection would still be a fraction of the speed and throughput of PCI 4.0 NVMe, or even the generation that's in the middle between the SATA and the PCI 4.0. There's a lot of hosts that had started provisioning this that provisioned everything using PCI 3.0 connected NVMe, and it doubles from 3 to 4 on what your actual throughput capability is. The third reason you need to know who you're buying from and what they're selling you and ask the right questions is that both early and new generations of NVMe are available in different form factors. So what this means is you should prefer for your server is what is called U.2 or U.3 form factor instead of M.2. All of these are fine. They can all have your speeds, but you should prefer to order servers that have what we call hot swappable drives, which would typically be in a U.dot form factor. This allows your web host or your cloud service provider to replace a failed drive without powering off your server, because when an M.dot drive has to be replaced, the server must be powered off because it literally plugs into a socket just like a memory DIMM. And my reason for all of this is you can find a lot of this really cool technology for sale at a lot of places, at a lot of different web hosts. There's obviously tens of thousands of search results vying for your business. But the truth of it is most of the ones that are buying all those Google advertisements and getting that top traffic, they are actually using consumer grade parts. So you need to just be careful on that. But I really, really think that it's such a huge and important change, and it can do a lot for your businesses. And you'll there's some crossover in my next topics, but I really do recommend, if you can, leveraging these newer storage technologies, and especially if you're able to do that as part of a whole stack refresh where, you're moving from, say, CentOS 7 to, here we're installing, Rocky Linux 8 or whatever. There are a bunch of different flavors that are out there, but so that's the part on storage. Next, I'm going to get into talking about CPU performance. So upgrade grandma's CPU. I don't know. So as I was preparing for this presentation and doing a lot of other research, it just got even more and more interesting to me. So while this might feel a little bit out of depth for some of you, I think it's really important. So let me just read what I wrote, and we could talk about it later in Q&A. Somehow we stopped talking about CPU performance over the last decade, but there's been a seismic change, and you should understand it, I think. The CPU landscape is exciting now, in my opinion, due to innovation from a chip company called AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. To make a long story very short, there's an observation called Moore's Law from 1965 by Gordon Moore, the co-founder of Intel, which until recently had held true, that the number of components and transistors on a chip could double every 2 years. This meant for almost the whole history of computing that relatively significant performance changes were seen in available processors every so many years. Without boring you or giving too much detail, I would explain this as the world's largest processor company, Intel, had poor leadership and maybe was asleep at the wheel for a long time. While they're now working very hard to catch up, and maybe their stock is even a good buy because it's a bit low, what happened over the last 10 plus years was Intel releasing new CPUs year over year with very minor performance gains. They found power savings along the way and also began to increase core counts. But mostly what happened is they lowered the gigahertz speed of each core, sometimes adding more cores. The net result of which was year over year for many years, a lot of the CPUs being sold were not really any faster than what clients were already previously using, especially if they bought the wrong models without doing research. Now I'm going to jump to warp speed, hopefully to give this some meaning and some context. Because really none of this is interesting if you can't somehow apply the knowledge to your business and earn more money as a result. I'm a computer hardware nerd, and I've always been very picky about choosing everything we purchase. For the whole history of my company, I like to say, and it's true, I personally selected, chose, and purchased every component we use, even the screws. I will put advances in CPU technology into perspective using two examples from my Mojo Host world of service. And listen, you can go buy servers and technology everywhere else. Everyone knows Mojo Host may be a good value, but definitely not the cheapest on the internet. So anything I'm talking about here, you can go Google it and price shop it. I use it because these are the examples that I know, and it helps me to paint a picture when I start relating to dollars and cents of things, both in this presentation and then in the next cloud one. Up until 2022, like most hosts, I selected Intel processors for my servers. It is true enough to say that within the span of 10 years, 2012 through 2022, there were two very smart processors in use at Mojo Host, very particular choices with high gigahertz speeds. In consideration of all things, I believe they were the absolute smartest ratio of performance and efficiency for our entry-level and our advanced server offerings. Now, the punchline. The entry-level server that is, or was, smart enough to run a whole small PaySci program on a single server is comparable to my next generation size medium VPS. What used to be my fastest server sold is now the same speed as what I called a 3XL VPS. We built these new VPS using AMD Ryzen CPUs, a rare choice, and we chose these as our new gold standard of dedicated server offering. This server, with such advanced functions and at a modest price, is a full 300% faster than my previous fastest generation server, which had the same count of CPU cores. I like to say, and I'm going to try to trademark it with Corey Silverstein, that not all cores are created equal. An Intel Xeon Gold 6526Y CPU from second quarter of this year is still 25% slower than this AMD Ryzen 7950X CPU that was released 2 years ago and is the one that I'm referencing that we're using as our new entry level of dedicated server. By the end of this year, I'll be stocking the next generation of not yet released AMD Ryzen 9000 CPUs, and it will be much faster than what we carry today. It'll be, I estimate, 20 to 25% faster, which is significant. I hope these examples help explain the technology gap which is out there. My new cloud platform, Mojo Compute, actually uses AMD EPYC processors, just like Amazon Web Services, AWS, their highest end offering. Turns out I chose it, I guess, at the same time they did. And then when I saw their product come to market, I was like, oh, that's cool. I guess I made a good choice if Amazon's buying the same things. So anyways, this is the AMD EPYC 9654 processor. Understanding which processor your sites would benefit from is not easy because the answers to such questions are not linear. The Ryzen processor, which accomplishes such a speed with just 32 CPU core equivalents, known as threads, whereas the EPYC has 192. So I repeat again, not all cores are created equal. Even using smarts technology such as AMD EPYC is not easy to understand. If you went to AWS and purchased their fastest cloud instance using this processor, it would be dramatically slower than a Mojo Compute instance using the exact same processor. And how is that possible? I asked myself this question, and I got to prove it to you, right? Because it's my presentation. Well, I discovered something in doing my research and just looking one step past the curtain a bit more. Amazon builds cloud nodes using 2 of these processors each, but the second processor delivers a diminishing performance return of only 20% additional performance, not the 100% additional performance that your logic would expect by doubling the same processor within a single server. And we can switch to the next slide. And I'll talk about this in a minute. But if you look to the basically to the right where it says AMD EPYC 9654 and dual AMD EPYC 9654, the big orange numbers at the bottom are the relative performance benchmark of both systems. And you can see one system's got 192 threads, the other has double that. So what's that? 384. And the difference in performance is actually only marginal between the two. So again, it's a try to understand what you're buying because everything isn't always quite what it seems. So lastly, and to wrap up talking about server processors before we segment into the next topic of a high-level cloud conversation, I want to give you one last piece of knowledge because knowledge is power, right? If you went to Amazon and purchased their fastest, newest generation cloud instance type, you should understand how that stacks up to your other non-cloud options. And I'll use as an example a practical AWS instance, the M7A 4x large. So this is a 16 vCPU, 64 gig of RAM instance. Depending on how you purchase this at Amazon, at AWS, it's going to cost you $447 per month to $676 per month, whether you buy it on demand so you can build it and destroy it, or whether you sign a 3-year contract, that's your price nexus. Speed-wise, it would be about the same as a large size Mojo VPS with 8 Ryzen vCPUs at a cost of $115, or as much as 40% slower than the comparable Mojo Compute 4x cloud instance at $223, or literally 1/6 of the performance of a dedicated server costing $399. I share this as a real frame of reference more than as shameless self-promotion. My brand prides itself as a good value every day. We are not known as being the cheapest host on the internet, so there will always be many more options less expensive than what we offer. But as a buyer, you must understand what exactly you purchase because not all servers, networks, data centers, or employee training is equal in the marketplace. Today, one account at a time, we're reviewing clients' use of technology in their real-world scenarios to help them make smart decisions about what to do next. For many site owners, fast is fast enough, and it's unknown if a migration into the latest and greatest hardware would yield increased profits. I do have a few testimonials and client accolades, but I'm still a pragmatist. I personally believe that site owners will see benefits when they upgrade out of older software stacks and leverage these newer technologies. Regardless of whether you need more processing power, it's only the use of such newer hardware that can then give you access to all the other technologies, such as DDR5 RAM, which is your system's memory, or the newest generation of NVMe storage, which everyone can agree is definitely beneficial. It used to be the case that storage was every server's bottleneck because most often your server's CPU is just waiting on a response from storage. Now the opportunity really does coalesce on these newer generations of hardware where the combination of so many simultaneous advances are taking place. My last argument for change will appeal to those of you with a green heart. If you want to do your part to make difference saving the planet, consider changing your hosting technologies in use approximately every 5 years or so. If you're currently using any combination of dedicated servers, consider switching to smart, virtualized private server or cloud technologies, as they will yield a performance gain over what you have today when they're deployed right and chosen correctly while using significantly less power. All right, and I see we're at 22 minutes, and I'm going to plow through the cloud thing, and then we'll get right to Q&A. It's going to happen real fast. So to cloud or not to cloud, this subject is hard, and to be honest, it's too deep and too wide of a conversation to meaningfully address in whole or in part with the time that I had today. I would, however, like to discuss some highlights and hopefully dispel some myths. If you're in the cloud because you developed your software and platforms in the cloud for the cloud, then you know you're in the right place. Well, maybe not in the right cloud, but using the right technology. How do you know? Because the software you are using has the right hooks to take advantage of different cloud features, such as auto scaling based on demand, which means creating and destroying cloud instances based on the demands of your environment. If you're not already in the cloud, you might be feeling FOMO, wondering whether you're doing something wrong right now or if there's anything else to gain. I have good news. And maybe for some of you, it might be a bit deflating. But for most of you watching today's presentation, you have very little to gain moving into the cloud. Maybe something more to gain by using a hybrid of some smart cloud technologies, but very little to gain for most of you because of the software that you're using isn't taking advantage of the kinds of features cloud really could be giving you. When I say software, I mean your affiliate tracking software, I mean your CMS. There are a lot of myths about cloud storage highlighted dramatically, about cloud usage, sorry, not cloud storage, but there's a lot of myths about using the cloud highlighted dramatically. If you were just to go to ChatGPT, we were talking about AI earlier, right? So I asked ChatGPT, I said, what are the benefits of moving to cloud? Give me this long list, and shit, of course I use some of that on my own website. But the real truth of it is a lot of that is garbage, and it's not at all true. I'll make this simple by making a whole lot of statements right here and now, which might even upset some of you in the audience. I believe the statements I'm about to make are true for at least 80% or more of you. These are all true statements. Cloud is more expensive. Cloud is not faster. Cloud is not more secure. Cloud is not easier to manage. But if it's not those things, then what is it? So cloud can increase scalability, how big you can be. Cloud can increase reliability. But like anything else, only if it's deployed and managed right. Cloud is very flexible, giving access to many instance types, making it very, very dynamic. Cloud provisioning is faster, it's nearly immediate. And lastly, cloud removes any limitations associated with physical hardware investment and lifecycle. What does it all mean? So I think this means that cloud can be great for many businesses and at the same time be unappreciable for many others. So don't kick yourself if you're not using it today very much, because chances are it wouldn't necessarily benefit your business. Success with clouds depends largely on how you choose to define success. Is it costs? Is it management complexity? Is it dynamic features? Is it performance? The answer for you, for all of you, is always all of the above. But the most accurate answer is truly how you decide to order that list of qualities from highest to least importance. Truly, people are at the heart of everything, whether it's you, your employees, independent contractors you pay, or your cloud or hosting provider delivering systems administration. The truth is, it's all complicated. Doing things right is hard, and quite frankly, is expensive depending on what your appetite is for risk, reliability, and performance. Your challenge in the cloud is similar to your challenge of dedicated hosting, VPS hosting, and other hybrid approaches, leveraging combinations of all of these hosting technologies. In the real world, and if you value your time, for most enterprises, the cost of full-time employees very quickly usurps actual hosting costs. AWS doesn't include support. Basically, no cloud service provider actually does. You're on your own to solve this with whatever combination of internal resources and vendors you can assemble. Even with MojoHost, cloud support beyond provisioning and cloud building advice is custom quote. It's a new product line that we're releasing next month And we'll be evaluating them individually when clients ask for fully managed support in the way that they're accustomed to receiving it today from MojoHost. The decoupling of managed web hosting services is coming soon to a host near you. Your ability to pay $150 or $250 per month per server for an all-you-can-eat support plan, including high complexity systems administration, monitoring, and management, will disappear as more services migrate into the cloud. Because frankly, more smaller web hosts are going to continue to go out of business, as they always have been. The disparity of products and services offered by small and large hosting providers will continue to grow, eventually showcasing that talented people are more expensive than new technology. You need to be careful with AWS and other cloud service providers' ecosystems. If you drink too much of their Kool-Aid and use too many of what I would call their microservices, you get vendor locked. This means quite literally, you'll have to reprogram to get away from them, or even to leverage what might be a core set of computing, storage, and CDN from other aggressive providers of cloud services such as MojoHost. I'll go very high level on costs and then we'll wrap this up to showcase some of the differences because I think it's really interesting. Lots of companies to compete for your business. I'm picking on MojoHost just for these because it's simple. AWS CloudFront is Amazon's content delivery network. The first 10 terabytes served from North America and Europe cost as little as $850 from AWS and as much as $1,140 if served from other regions. This costs $50 with Mojo CDN delivering from all 6 continents. AWS S3 is Amazon's cloud object storage product. We both charge 2.3 cents per gigabyte to store in basically what's hot cloud storage. The difference is that AWS literally charges 15 to 30 times more for data transfer. And data transfer is the cost to download your data from the internet. In AWS EC2, also known as their compute, this is the core most service of cloud. This is how you purchase your virtual cloud hosting nodes of CPU and RAM. Mojo Compute, my comparable product cloud family, is using the same CPUs, and its hourly price is 60%, 67% off AWS hourly price, and even still 27% less off of their 3-year contracted pricing. Anybody's use of VPS or dedicated server technology, mine or anyone else, will yield additional cost savings beyond all these numbers. Lastly, just to put everything in perspective, the first gigabit of traffic out of AWS cloud will cost you $20,000. Mojo Cloud, it's $500. If you just run at a dedicated server, guess what? It's free. We don't charge for it, and neither do a lot of other web hosts. Cloud isn't easy, and neither are the choices you have in front of your business. If I or my team can ever be of assistance, please feel free to reach out to us directly. My gift to the industry is my honesty and my work ethic. I'm very happy to help anyone at any station to find their way with an honest advice, regardless of where this leads them in their hosting decisions and journey. Thank you very much for your time.
Oops. Just getting my mute off. Thanks so much, Brad. Big round of applause.
Sorry,
Really appreciate
that was
that.
30 minutes.
Well, thank you. That was great. I learned more about hosting today than I've ever done before. Brad warned me a little bit. Hey, we said we might be go a little bit deep in technology, but we're going to wade into it and see what comes up. And as you said, Brad, there's going to be lots of questions. We do have lots of questions. We might not be able to get to all of them, but we're going to start at the top and do the best we can. So
the first come all off easily if you want to read every one of them.
Yeah. So the first one is from Charles. The question is, isn't RAM still better than physical disk for certain data, namely database reads?
So the answer is yes. RAM's always the fastest, right? And the truth is, for most databases, they're already going to be living in sort of RAM, so to speak, anyways. But remember, if you're not just reading from your databases and you're writing to them frequently, then how you pair that with your storage is really, really important. And the cool thing about this new NVMe storage is it's basically functioning at near the speed of RAM. It's not like an SSD. We've 10x that, right? So they're both important, and you're going to see significant database capability expansion when you're pairing your new server with new storage.
Thank you. Next one, putting together the two topics of the two topics of the conference, AI and the latest in hosting technologies. Have you heard of any initiatives around using AI to boost storage integrity performance using predictive techniques?
I love that. I go back to my storage team afterwards and say, hey, why aren't you guys using AI yet? So, storage, especially at cloud scale, it's really, really complicated. We've got a few super talented DevOps and engineers working on that. The answer to your question is no, we're not using that yet. We have tons of dashboards, tons of monitoring, lots of information because cloud technologies are so important. We even backend pay another enterprise clouds service support provider just in case, like, something super strange popped up that we would have an additional resource. So no, we're not currently doing that, but we are working with and some of the brightest minds that have ever used this technology. I was actually quite flattered and I don't want to say scared, but I learned a lot of things when we started engaging other companies about the cloud storage, because you probably don't know, but I've had it for years and we have tens and tens of petabytes. So lots and lots of storage online, thousands and thousands of drives across more than hundreds of servers to build our scalable cloud storage. We learned from the most interesting use cases in the world because we serve you guys, So when, Cam4 decided to, throw a few billion images into a single bucket, guys are like, wow, we've never seen anything like that before. So, but this is what helps to make us better at this whole experience and how I think we've raised our expectations to, to try to deliver the best service. I see Theory's next question is about quantum servers. Are they a reality sometime soon? Well, let's hope for the safety and security of all of the countries that we live in, that this potential future technology is only in the hands of people that want to do good and not evil, because somewhere within that is a paradigm shift of all of our living and global security. It's not anywhere on my radar, no.
So the next one from Charles: how does the reliability of Ryzen CPUs versus Intel Xeon CPUs differ? The former aren't specifically created with the highest bin parts, while the latter is, or used to be.
I love this question because I'm a technologist and I'm a hardware nerd. So here's the thing. Ryzen was just never marketed for business use beyond workstation because AMD profits more to sell EPYC CPUs. The Ryzen CPUs actually have all of the same functionality as EPYC. They just have a few less memory sockets, connections. So there's not a lower quality CPU. We're pairing them with enterprise grade motherboards that use error correcting RAM. And all of this is engineered, by all of these companies together in concert. And so there is no the answer to your question, there's zero reliability difference. AMD markets that obviously towards an enthusiast that likes to do gaming. And guess what? This server technology kicks the shit out of everything else that I have ever seen in my whole technical life of other branded stuff. And if all AMD was doing was selling these instead of their EPYC CPUs, maybe they wouldn't have the stock price gain that they've seen. But now it's caught on, and what's actually happening, and I just learned it in a recent call with AMD, the next generation of AMD Ryzen CPUs is also going to be rebranded as an EPYC. So it's going to come out basically the same CPU, but with two different labels on it. Maybe they'll unlock a feature or two, but essentially, there is no reliability difference between Intel Xeon and AMD on any product lines.
Okay, next one we've got from Paul. Brad, did I hear a rumor that that NVIDIA and Intel have announced a partnership? I think more information will come in the next few days. And this was in answer to AMD and on the GPU and AI side.
Paul, I've got no idea. I'll be finding out as soon as it gets announced. I mean, it would certainly be very interesting, but there's a lot going on in the CPU marketplace. I talked about CPUs, but I didn't talk about ARM processors and some of the other things that are very interesting. Apple, doing its own CPUs. There's a lot going on there and a lot to unpack. But I suspect that this rush in the stock market and with AI is going to be a pretty crazy ride with how different companies sort of partner up or compete against each other.
Brad. And then the next one from Darren O'Brien. Do you specialize in clients serving web content only, or also there are other kinds of workloads like data processing or AI model training? And the related question, do you have hosts with the NVIDIA GPUs for model training?
It's a great question, you know, and I'd love to sell stuff. So truth of it is, if it was that easy to, it's easy to buy and it's easy to put these things in a rack, but what isn't easy is pivoting all my technical teams and making them experts so that we can support the stuff in the right way and understand how to make money with it while making it available to the market. So the short answer to your question is I do have some GPU servers in my inventory. I don't have enough, and I don't have enough different variations because for me, it's not yet relevant. Until you guys know how you want to do what you want to do, I'm not jumping into that yet because it's too easy for me to go spend $500,000 or $1 million on hardware and have it sit there and wait for demand to appear. When really in the meantime, I'm just, you know, I try to keep our core brand very focused on delivering what we know that we're best at. And my hope is that by perhaps fourth quarter of this year, I can circle back to this as we've got so many different things coming out of DevOps and launching as new products where then we can kind of double down and come up with a nice suite of cloud ready, pay on demand, you know, GPUs for, you know, developing and training your own models.
Great. Thanks,
So
Brad.
thanks, Brad. Let's give Brad a round of applause. I know there's a couple more questions. We're going to have to shift gears due to time, but Brad's going to put his contact details into the chat. He'll be able to answer those, and he might be able to even pick some off in the chat and answer them as we're shifting gears. So next up, oh, thank you, Brad. Really appreciate it. Next up, we have Fernando Latore. He's our Director of Risk